And when you've reached that, that's when they will execute you.
So we can't execute you if you're
Clinically insane.
clinically insane. There we go. That's what I was going for. Thank you, sir.
We run into problems though with that whenever we introduce somebody who is mentally retarded.
Mm-hmm.
They can still be executed if they're declared insane still.
Okay.
To me, that stands as a big problem with the death penalty, is that we can execute somebody who has the mental capacity of a 6-year-old,
Okay.
despite them being like 25. And that's still legal in Kentucky as well. So that can be a problem with like insanity and stuff like that. Is that we kind of go as foreground conclusion.
Earlier, Braden mentioned the first public hanging. Talk to me a little bit about why executions are no longer public.
Pretty cool, the gruesome factor behind it. So when the first woman was hung in the United States in Arizona, her execution was botched. And so pretty much what happened is there was a crowd there to watch, and her head kind of ripped apart from her body, and a lot of people were messed up after that. And so that's when even the prison system that was established there had stopped doing that form of execution because it messed so many of the guards and stuff up after they saw that.
And messed up like mentally, or are we effectively deterring crime
Like-
because they've watched it happen?
And just so, sorry, I started to cough too much adequately. The last public hanging was in the United States here in Kentucky. It was in Owensboro, Kentucky. And I would think, people seeing that could be quite a deterrent. So what do you think about that?
It could also cause protest.
It could what?
Could cause protest. More likely to cause protest in today's society as well. That's true.
Yeah, there's the line of being humane and trying to scare people, because I'm sure that you can find some pretty gruesome ways to kill somebody that would, scare quite a few people away. But you have to. There's that thin line between humane, effective.
We talked about the public executions are not generally open to the public. Who can witness an execution?
The family's victim,
Okay.
the victim of the execution's family, and
Okay.
then whoever the guards that are on duty that are supposed to be there. A chaplain has the option to if he wants to or not,
Okay.
and that's usually just to pray over the person as it's being carried out. And usually they're in the room with the victim's family praying for the victim's family as well.
That's fantastic information. What leads up to the execution? I've always heard about this whole last meal thing. I mean, tell me about the process. If you're going to be executed, regardless of the method, what's the typical process for your day?
Once all your appeals have been expended.
Yes, I'm talking about the last
So like
day.
the last day.
Yeah. I watched The Green Mile one time, so I'm curious.
It's great.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, I don't think we have
I don't think we have that.
I think there's typically a last meal.
Yeah,
You
that's
typically get to
right.
request anything within reason for your last meal, and certainly access to a chaplain or something
Yes,
if so requested. Usually there's a final words kind of thing if you want to say something prior to your execution. That can go one way or the other typically. So
I know that they do give you pen and paper or whatever. That way you can write a final letter and almost like a will. So even if you did have anything left and you didn't have a will written up to that point, they do let you do that.
do we know what happens to the person after they've been executed? Do we bury them? Do we cremate them? Do we turn them over to somebody? What happens? Do we donate their bodies to science? I don't know. What do we do?
So I believe it's whatever the family of the victim wants.
Okay.
So if they want them to be cremated, they can cremate them or bury them.
So return to the family in the case that's available. Okay.
3 of the 4 of you are not in favor of the death penalty. Is the vast majority of Americans would be in favor with you 3, or would they be on Chandler's side?
They're on their side.
Yes, 61%, I believe, said that they would rather have life in prison or a different punishment besides capital punishment. And that was out of 1,500 murders throughout the U.S.
Do we know why? Go ahead, Chandler, what were you gonna say?
Alright, I just want to say something real quick. We talk about this being like inhumane and stuff like that as far as death penalty goes, but life in prison is equally as inhumane as death penalty is. And the reason why I'm for the death penalty is not because I think that the person should go to prison for life or that they should die. It's because prison for me is rehabilitation. It's not keeping them in there forever. If it was 20 years for death penalty, I'd say get rid of death penalty, but it's not. So all we're doing is overpopulating the prisons, or we're killing them. So we've got to come up with some solution to it. But life in prison and death penalty, to me, are equally as inhumane. So that's the reason why I think differently than you guys do.
Very good clarification.
How is it that you see, like, life imprisonment as equally inhumane?
Because if we look at Dawson's solution to what would happen if somebody denied to do something if they were already in life in prison, which is solitary confinement, we've seen nothing good come of that. All it does is cause mental problems, and to put somebody to insanity essentially is even more inhumane, I would think, than the death penalty is. To have somebody live in insanity is absolutely crazy. For me, life penalty, though, it also brings about some of the same instances there. We had talked about an option, which was they would have the option to death, so that they could choose if they wanted to die or go to life in prison, and so they could do that at any point during their sentence, which I
Okay,
think
you
they
talk
would,
about how the mental aspect comes into play. Well, what about those who are convicted of crimes due to mental illnesses?
Are you asking if, like, somebody who was mentally insane already had committed a crime?
You know, I mean, do you feel like they should be in prison?
No, they should be in an insane asylum. They're not fit to even be in a prison system because they're too much of a danger to the prisoner. Because I mean, like, I think the prison system is to rehabilitate these people. We've got to get these people back out there to be productive members of society. Right now, we have too long prison sentences, and we're overpopulating the prisons. So we've got to get them back out there, and they've got to be productive in society. If we have insane people in there, we're not solving the problem.
So do you guys agree? Do we have overpopulated prison systems? Does it change your mind? Does Chandler's argument change your mind as to whether the death penalty is valid or not?
I've always been 50-50 based off of it.
Okay.
But the way I've looked at it is, yes, I think our prisons are overpopulated because you have people who do basic, such as like robberies, that sometimes are not even armed robberies, and then they get sentenced to like 10 years in prison.
Okay.
And I think, personally, to me, that's just a little too long.
Okay.
And granted, yes, theft's not good, but I think a 5-year sentence would be like long enough, as Chandler said, for that rehabilitation stuff, to where you could get them back out in society and let them know that it's right or wrong.
Dawson, you agree?
I believe that the prisons are overpopulated, but I also believe that if we did make the death penalty illegal, we would also save a bunch of money. We could more than likely build more prisons and to help populate, not to have it overpopulated.
So get rid of the death penalty to save money to build more prisons to cure the overpopulation
Well,
caused by not killing people.
well, it all goes back to me not believing that we should kill people in the first place. So if that's what it has to come to,
So what's the solution?
I was just getting Ryan to answer. He was so ready. Did you see him?
No, I got the solution.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So for me, it kind of makes the argument about rehabilitation, trying to get people back into society. But I would say there's different forms of rehabilitation, where more like on a spiritual level, it's just somebody becoming a better person. I would consider that rehabilitation. You imply the death penalty and you kill them, they lose that ability. And so for me, it's, at the prisons, whether it's a reward punishment type of situation, where you gain more freedom if you follow the rules, Not to the extent for punishment as solitary confinement, but something that I thought about as, you know, having separate violent and non-violent prisons for, you know, the violent crimes like murder, armed robbery and stuff. People could go to one prison for, you know, drugs or, you know, like tax fraud. People could go to a separate prison that isn't quite as harsh. And, you know, people can also be switched between the ones based on their behavior within the prisons, and, you know, that might be able to motivate some people. Like you talked about the person who has life without parole, so he has no motivation to follow the rules of it. That could potentially motivate some people. I've read plenty of stories. We read a story in the Bible about a fighter who was sentenced for, I think, drunk driving, and he killed a police officer. But he found the Lord while he was in prison, and then he later became a chaplain. And then there's another story about a man named Stanley Williams, who was the leader of a prominent gang in Chicago, and he was convicted of at least 4 murders, and he was given the death penalty. But while on death row, he became an anti-gang advocate, and he began telling people, he found Jesus, began telling people inside of prison, you know, like the horrors of gangs, and trying to get people kind of to change their lifestyles. But even, you know, with his changes and, you know, his change of heart, he was still killed from lethal injection. So I think you should take that into account, even if the death penalty isn't abolished.
I would say that the prison system you just described is actually the prison system we have. We have different security levels of prison. You've heard of maximum security. There's also minimum security. There's lots of other levels. In fact, there's work release prisons where you're there at night, but you can leave during the day to go to work and come back. So that actually is in place now. The problem is I think we're overpopulated at most of those levels. Yeah. Do you guys have any statistics on recidivism? We all certainly hope that anybody who's in jail can go on to be a productive member of society, but talk to me about what is the recidivism rate? What are the odds that when Braden gets out of prison, not that I'm putting you in prison, Braden, but theoretically if you were, what are the odds that Braden's going to end up back in prison after he leaves, if he's paroled or if he just serves out his sentence? Do we know?
And while you're looking for that, I want to come back to something Ryan said. If the purpose of prison is rehab, rehabilitating so that they can rejoin society, and this is for any of you, I'm not just picking on Ryan, because the 2 of you also were in favor of that. And I think Chandler is in favor of rehab as well. What happens to when you have somebody who's just beyond that? They don't want help for whatever reason. Like a serial killer or antisocial personality disorder, they just, nothing you do is going to help them. No amount of rehab. Pardon me?
Serial killer should have been executed.
So you're lumping them into a different category than everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like what we said with the whole solitary confinement thing, what I believe we should do is if somebody's denying the help, then we just, I guess you could say, just don't give it to them.
So you'd put somebody who's already mentally unstable in solitary confinement?
Well, not so much solitary confinement, but like in their own cell. That way they couldn't do harm to like anybody else, I guess you could say. Like if there's another prisoner in the cell with them, they couldn't like figure out a way to kill them while they're in that cell with them. So it'd be kind of like its own special cell, almost like a holding cell, but it's just for one person only.
But you would never be in favor of putting that person to death. You'd want them to spend the rest of their life in prison, whether
I mean,
it's...
depending on how they act in prison, if it just gets to the point where they don't have any self-control and are causing harm to like felt like guards or other prisoners or something, putting more people in harm, then I would say we could...
Execute?
Yes. Because there's no point in risking multiple lives for just one life.
Yeah, I think you would give them the option of death, but if they want to sit in a prison and make no effort to try to follow the rules, you kind of let them sit in prison. They go through the stuff. It's kind of a drab life, but if that's what they choose. That's what they will.
Okay, guys, let me ask you this question. Does your viewpoint change if it's not a crime committed in this country and the justice system from this country? Does it extend to enemy combatants as well? What if I picked you up on the battlefield in Afghanistan and you were fighting for ISIS or whatever, and now I've got you at Guantanamo Bay and you're in front of a military tribunal and they convict you of whatever the crime was, do you guys feel that person should be put to death because they're not just a prisoner in our prison system here, they're an enemy combatant? Chandler says yes. Ryan?
I would probably agree.
Okay. Dawson? Okay.
I would agree as
So
well.
circumstance is different because this is outside of the United States because it's a battlefield thing, all the
Well,
above?
they don't have the rights as an American.
Okay.
Just based on, they're an enemy. I don't think war is necessarily humane, so I don't think you can necessarily bring up the humane and inhumane debate through that. But, they're an enemy. I think they would hurt you if they had the chance and if they've proven that they would in the past, for the safety and protection of the country.
So less of a moral issue, more of a legal argument then in that case.
That's what I was going to ask. So are you saying that that treating people humanely and the sentence that they should receive that is relative to circumstances?
I think it can be if it's to serve the greater good.
How would you define that?
If somebody has a bomb and they're about to hurt a bunch of people, like I would have no problem killing them. I guess it's to save would help people. If somebody if he's an enemy country or part of an enemy country, I don't think that person has a right to live if he knows things, if he has the ability to hurt or kill millions of Americans. It's just like to save people.
But all of the serial killers, can you use the same kind of mentality with them? Because that would be saving a lot of lives,
Or
right?
to keep people, one person.
Yeah, I think if they're an American, that is serial killers, Americans still have those rights for life.
So you're saying that Americans have more rights than other people in other places? Are you saying this is a basis of humanity or a basis of a country and a country's laws? Again, is it relative?
Yeah. I think
Your position on capital punishment is relative based on the laws of the country or people in general?
Yeah, I think that's for sure.
And we think about the United States and how overpopulated we are.
What if it
Maybe-
wasn't an overpopulated country? Should we kill or not kill people then? Why does the population of the prisons matter? Sorry.
What do you think we can do to deter people from committing the crimes in general? Because it seems like that's where our answer would be, get people not to commit crimes, and therefore our prisons wouldn't be overpopulated. Do we go back to an eye for an eye? Somebody steals, got their hand off.
Either way, the majority of the crimes are committed by lower class people. It's not usually crimes. That'll land them in a prison sentence for a long period of time. There are the cases where this does happen, obviously. But a majority of these things happen in communities where there's not enough money to support themselves or their families. And so they resort to crimes. I'm not saying we need a social program for it, but we need some way to give these people options and opportunities that perhaps they wouldn't have had so that they can, be productive in society. Then the people who already have money, that's not much you can do with it.
Of all the people sitting on death row right now, how does gender or race or ethnic background kind of play into that makeup?
Well, Kentucky actually has passed a law, and they're actually the only state that has passed a law to combat race. Over 75% of murder victims in cases resulting in an execution were white, even though nationally only 50% of murder victims are generally white.
So the victims are white.
Yeah.
75% of the victims are white. In Kentucky, is that what you said?
That's in the U.S. But we have passed law, or Kentucky has passed laws that state that we can't really use the race